I shattered my marriage with the surgical precision of a woman who forgot her partner was still breathing today. At 34, I am the queen of a silent ruin built from every argument I ever won against the man I loved now. My tongue was a silver blade used to dismantle his soul until there was nothing left but a cold, deep void here. I treated his heart like a faulty logic circuit, and I felt no guilt as I reprogrammed his very existence now. Every night I found 5 logical reasons why his bad day was actually his own failure as a human being today. It was a game of mental chess where I sacrificed our intimacy to prove my intellect was superior to his own. I never raised my voice because screaming is for those who lack the vocabulary to dismantle a person slowly. I preferred the quiet precision of a well-placed sentence that made him question his own fragile reality now. Every time he tried to express a feeling, I countered with a fact until his emotions felt like toxic errors. He stopped saying "I feel" and started saying "you are right," just to end the exhausting cycle of my debates today. I felt a surge of triumph every time he conceded, but I failed to notice the light fading in his blue eyes. We sat across from each other at dinner while I mentally edited his sentences for perfect consistency now. I thought I was helping him become a better version, but I was just erasing his very human identity today. My pride was a fortress, and I stood on the high walls cheering as I drove my only ally far away so fast now. He was not a competitor in a debate club, he was my partner, but I treated love like a cold court hearing today. I would trap him in contradictions and watch him struggle to find words that I had already invalidated now. There is a specific kind of coldness that settles in a house when one person stops trying to be heard today. I saw the victory in his surrender, but I was too blind to see the suitcase he began packing in his mind now. Winning gave me a rush of power that masked the terrifying truth of how disconnected we had become today. The morning he left was not an explosion of anger, but a quiet realization that I had finally won it all now. He did not even argue about the division of our assets because he knew I had a reason for every dish today. I stood in the hallway with my arms crossed, feeling the familiar sting of superiority as he took his bags. I told him he was making a mistake and listed 3 logical reasons why his departure was quite premature. Mark just looked at me with a hollow expression that made my perfectly crafted arguments feel heavy today. He did not say a word back, and for the first time in our decade together, I felt the weight of eloquence now. My mind was already rehearsing the speech I would give when he inevitably came crawling back to our house. I spent the first week rearranging the furniture to fit a life where no one ever disagreed with my choices. Every silence in the kitchen felt like a trophy I had earned by being the most articulate person in life now. I kept my schedule tight and my house perfect because order was the only thing I could still control today. But late at night, I found myself checking my phone for a notification that would prove he missed my advice. I missed the friction of his presence, even though I had spent years trying to smooth out every rough edge. Controlling the narrative of our breakup was easy when I was the only narrator left in the empty hallways. I told my friends that he lacked the emotional maturity to handle a woman with a strong and decisive mind. They nodded and agreed because I was very good at making my perspective seem like the only objective truth. Underneath the mask of confidence, I started to notice a strange tremor in my hands when I poured coffee now. I had won the struggle, but the territory I now occupied was a barren wasteland where nothing could grow fast. I started leaving the television on just to hear a human voice that I did not have the power to contradict. The tension began to shift from the space between us to the space inside my own increasingly restless mind. 1 month of silence passed, and the victory started to taste like ash in the back of my very dry throat now. I found myself drafting long emails explaining why he was wrong to stay away, but I never hit the send button. The silence in the bedroom was a physical weight that pressed against my chest every single night. Here now, I went to our favorite cafe hoping to run into him just so I could demonstrate my newfound stability today. I saw his car parked near the park and my heart did a frantic dance that logic could not even explain well. I waited for an hour, feeling like a stalker in a world where I used to be the one who was chased down fast. When he finally appeared, he was not alone, and my carefully constructed composure began to crack fast now. He was laughing with a woman who looked nothing like me, and his face was bright with a genuine light here. She touched his arm, and he did not pull away or look for a reason to correct her light-hearted gesture today. I felt a surge of irrational anger, because he was breaking the rules of the misery I had written for him. He was supposed to be grieving the loss of my intellect, not thriving in the presence of someone else. Now here, I walked toward them with my prepared script, ready to dismantle their happiness with a single comment today. But as I got closer, I realized I had no jurisdiction over this man who was no longer my weary victim now. My legs felt like lead, and the words that usually flowed so easily were trapped behind a wall of fear today. He saw me across the street, and for a brief second our eyes locked in a silent and painful exchange here now. I expected to see resentment or even a spark of the old frustration, but his gaze was terrifyingly calm today. He gave me a polite nod, as if I were a distant acquaintance from a life he had already forgotten ago now. That simple nod hurt more than any argument we ever had, because it proved that I no longer mattered today. I walked back to my silent car, feeling the bitter sting of a reality that I could no longer manipulate now. The air inside my vehicle was heavy with the thick scent of my own arrogance and his ghost voice today. Here, I sat gripped by the steering wheel while my brain frantically searched for a logical exit from the pain now. There was no argument left to win against a man who simply did not care for my sharp opinions anymore today. I spent years sharpening my wit like a sharp blade, only to realize I had severed my vital lifeline right now. Every time I corrected his grammar or dismissed his ideas, I was digging a deep hole for our shared soul today. I thought I was the smarter person in every room, but I was just the loudest voice in a freezing vacuum now. My internal monologue turned into a vicious predator as I replayed a decade of toxic and verbal traps here. I realized that my need to be superior was actually a desperate attempt to avoid being truly vulnerable now. Every logical point I made was a brick I used to build a wall that eventually buried me alive in silence today. I am a master of the final word, but I finally realized that the last word is just a scream in a vacuum now. My superior intelligence was just a high-tech mask for a woman who was too terrified to be seen as weak today. I did not just want to be right, I wanted to destroy his ability to exist without my constant validation. Now he is building a life of simple joy, while I am drowning in the perfect logic of my own isolation today. I am forced to admit that my intellect was not a gift but a weapon I used to erase the only man I loved here. I looked in the mirror and saw a woman who had optimized her life until it was a barren and dry desert now. My skin looked pale, and my eyes were hollow shells of the vibrant person I used to be many years ago today. I had traded intimacy for authority, and now I possessed a crown over a kingdom of white and bone dust here. The woman I saw him with did not look like a genius, but she looked like she understood a very true peace now. She did not need to win because she was already living a life that I had fully abandoned for my pride today. I started to cry, but even my tears felt like they were being judged by a part of me that was frozen still now. My ego was a starving beast that had finally run out of things to consume, except for my broken heart today. I was finally the winner of a competition that no one else was even interested in playing with me here now. I entered my silent home where the shadows felt like physical weights pressing against my pale, cold skin today. I opened my laptop and saw a photograph of him, smiling brightly at a small wooden beach house porch. Now here. The caption read, "Finally found a deep peace in a world that does not require a defense for every joy today." He looked 10 years younger, as if the crushing weight of my expectations had been a burden. He dropped fast now. I tried to think of a witty comment or a logical flaw in his happiness, but my mind was entirely empty today. I realized that my superior intelligence was a golden cage and I was the only prisoner left inside it now. There are no legal appeals in the court of lost love, and no one to hear the final statement of agony here. I had optimized my relationship into cold non-existence because I prioritized accuracy over raw warmth today. I looked at the dark dinner table where we used to sit and saw a ghost of a man who finally quit here now. I won every single argument we ever had, but the final prize was a hollow house and a life of silence today. I picked up a heavy book to read, but the words were just symbols that could not touch my frozen heart now. I was right about his flaws and right about his mistakes, but I was tragically wrong about what stays here today. He is building a new story with a woman who listens with her soul while I listen with a sharp blade now here. The tragedy of being right is that you eventually run out of people who are willing to be wrong for you today. I am 34 and I have mastered the art of being correct in a life that is completely void of light now. I closed my eyes and whispered his name into the cold shadows, but the only reply was the tick of time here. I am the lonely victor of a conflict that destroyed everything I loved, and now I sit on a throne of ashes. My victory is a silent vault, and the silence is the only thing that will never disagree with my logic now.